The gravel crunched to silence. Sloane Hartley killed the engine of the U-Haul and sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, staring through the cracked windscreen at what the lawyer had called property. 2 acres of brush and limestone cliff face, Arkansas hills rolling away into haze, a shed with yellow caution tape flapping in the wind like a surrender flag. $42.16. That's what the phone said when she checked the bank app one more time, as if the numbers might have changed in the last 5 minutes. They hadn't. The screen was cracked from when Garrett had thrown it across the mediation room, his final act of contempt, before walking out with everything else. The house, the joint account, her grandfather's tools, even the dog. She pocketed the phone and stepped down from the cab. October air bit at her face, sharp and clean in a way Seattle never was. Newton County, Arkansas, middle of nowhere, end of the line. Behind her, 10 cardboard boxes shifted in the truck bed. Everything she owned. Some crushed from the panic pack, the last second scramble to get out before Garrett changed the locks. Clothes, photos, a box of military medals she never wore, bills she couldn't pay. The wind off the plateau was relentless. It churned through the scrub oak and made the tall grass hiss like static. Sloane pulled her old army coat tighter and walked toward the shed. Worthless, Garrett had said. Useless hillside acres. Your dead husband's joke of an inheritance. You can have it. The way he'd smiled when he said it. That accountant's smile. Cold math behind his eyes. He'd already calculated what she was worth to him. 0 minus the settlement he'd wrung out in court. She reached the shed and yanked at the door. Rusted hinges screamed. Inside, nothing but rotted plywood and the skeleton of an old wheelbarrow. Wasp nests in the corners. A smell like decayed leaves and animal piss. Behind the shed, the land dropped away. Sheer limestone face, maybe 60 feet down to where the trees started again. She could see why the lawyer's office had laughed. Don't fall off the ledge, the paralegal had said. The whole room had erupted. Hands over mouths. Sideways glances. Sloane had forced a smile, her voice jammed hard in her throat. You all think this is a joke. Nobody said that, ma'am. But they were still laughing when she walked out with the deed. Now she stood at the edge and looked down. The drop was clean. Quick. For half a second she understood the appeal. Then the wind shifted, and she stepped back. No. Not like this. Not after everything. She turned and walked toward the house. The structure sat about 100 yards from where she'd parked, accessible only by an overgrown footpath that wound through brambles and broken fence posts, white siding gone gray with mildew, one shutter banging loose on its hinge. The porch sagged in the middle like a broken back. This was Owen's inheritance. The thing he'd never told her about until the lawyer called 2 years ago, 3 days after the funeral. Your late husband owned property in Newton County. You're the heir, Owen. Dead at 40 from a heart attack so sudden the paramedics said there was nothing anyone could have done. Just gone. 1 minute laughing at something on TV, the next minute on the floor, eyes already empty. She'd buried him in Seattle, scattered his ashes at Kerry Park like he'd asked. And then Garrett had swooped in. Funny how that worked. Owen dead 6 months, and suddenly there was Garrett. Charming. Attentive. He'd helped her sort through the insurance paperwork, held her hand at the estate lawyer's office, proposed on the 1-year anniversary of Owen's death. She'd said yes because she was tired, because she didn't want to be alone, because Garrett seemed solid in a way Owen never quite had been. Biggest mistake of her life. The marriage lasted 11 months, long enough for Garrett to get his name on the joint account, long enough to map out every asset she owned. And then the divorce. Fast and brutal. He'd brought lawyers she couldn't afford to fight. Took the house they'd bought together, even though she'd paid the down payment. Took the savings. Took everything except this. Try not to spend it all in one place, he'd said, tossing the property deed across the table like it was garbage. Sloane reached the porch steps. The wood groaned under her weight, but held. She tried the front door. Locked. The key the lawyer had given her stuck in the mechanism rusted solid. She had to slam her shoulder against the frame 3 times before the door finally gave way with a crack of splitting wood. Inside, the air was sour and still. Dust hung in the shafts of light coming through the broken windows. The living room was empty except for an overturned chair and what looked like a body's imprint in the dust on the floor. Someone had been here. Slept here, maybe. Squatters or drifters passing through. Sloane's boots echoed on the warped floorboards. Each step announced her. Intruder. Trespasser. Someone who didn't belong. The ceiling fan in the center of the room had collapsed at some point, its blades bent and touching the floor like a dead insect. She skirted around it and moved deeper into the house. 2 bedrooms. A bathroom with a sink full of leaves. A kitchen where the linoleum had peeled away in long strips revealing black rot underneath. This was it. Her inheritance. Her fortune. She wanted to laugh, but the sound wouldn't come. In the larger bedroom, someone had left a mattress. Stained and torn springs poking through. The closet door hung open. Empty except for wire hangers and the smell of mothballs. Sloane stood in the doorway and felt the weight of it all pressing down. The divorce. The money gone. The future that had collapsed into this single moment. Alone in a ruined house in Arkansas with $42 and nowhere left to go. Her phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Heard you got the place. Congrats on the dump. G. Garrett. Of course. She deleted it without responding and shoved the phone back in her pocket. Outside, the wind picked up. A storm was rolling in from the west, dark clouds stacking up over the ridge. She could smell rain coming. Ozone and wet earth. She needed to unload the truck before the weather hit. Get the boxes inside. Figure out where she was going to sleep tonight, if the mattress was even usable, or if she'd be on the floor. She turned to leave, and something caught her eye. The mailbox. It was mounted on the porch rail, half rusted, listing to one side. But underneath the flap, something white. A piece of paper, maybe, or she walked over and tugged at it. An envelope, old yellowed at the edges. taped to the underside of the mailbox with packing tape that had gone brittle and brown. Sloane peeled it free. The envelope was addressed in faded blue ink, the handwriting shaky but deliberate. To Sloane Hartley if found. Her breath stopped. That was her mother's handwriting. Her mother dead 3 years now. Cancer that ate through her in 6 months. Fast and merciless. Sloane's hands shook as she turned the envelope over. The seal was still intact. She broke it open and pulled out a single sheet of paper, folded tight. The ink had faded, but the words were still legible. Sloane, if you're reading this, you found the place. Good. Your grandfather trusted the wrong people. Read my letter. The rest is behind the bedroom wall. Codes your birth year. Act fast. The world will eat us alive if you don't. Mom. No signature. Just the word Mom underlined twice. Sloane read it again, then a third time. Your grandfather trusted the wrong people. Her grandfather, Thomas Hartley, dead since she was 10 years old. She barely remembered him. A tall man with calloused hands and a workshop that smelled like oil and sawdust. He'd shown her how to use a wrench once, how to measure twice and cut once. And then he was gone. Heart attack, they said. Died poor. Died alone in a rental apartment in Little Rock, with nothing to his name but debt and broken dreams. Behind the bedroom wall, Sloane looked back at the house, the bedroom, the one with the mattress and the empty closet. Codes your birth year, 1990. She folded the letter and slipped it into her coat pocket. Her heart was hammering now, adrenaline cutting through the exhaustion. Act fast. Why fast? Fast from what? The letter could have been taped under that mailbox for years. Her mother had died in 2021. This could have been sitting here since then, waiting. Waiting for what? The wind gusted hard enough to rattle the windows. The first fat drops of rain hit the porch roof like drumbeats. Sloane went back inside. The bedroom felt different now. She scanned the walls looking for seams, panels, anything that didn't belong. The walls were old plaster, painted white years ago now, cracked and water-stained. Nothing obvious. No hidden doors or safes built into the drywall. She turned to the closet, empty. Wire hangers, mothballs. But the back wall was different. She stepped inside the closet, running her hands over the surface. Not plaster. Plywood. Cheap, unpainted plywood that didn't match the rest of the house. And it was set slightly forward like it was covering something. Sloane pushed on it. Solid. No give. She stepped back and looked at the edges. On the left side where the plywood met the frame, there was a gap, just big enough to get her fingers in. She wedged her hand into the space and pulled. The plywood shifted. Not much, but enough. She pulled hard, her muscles burning. Come on. The plywood came free with a screech of nails pulling from wood. She stumbled back, barely keeping her balance, and the panel clattered to the floor. Behind it, darkness. A crawl space, maybe 4 feet wide, 3 feet tall. Concrete floor. The smell of cold, stale air rolled out. Sloane's pulse was in her throat now. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The battery was at 12%. Better make this quick. She crouched down and shone the light inside. The beam caught something green, metal, bolted to the floor about 6 feet back. A safe. Sloane crawled forward on her hands and knees, phone clenched between her teeth. The concrete was freezing. Cobwebs brushed her face and she swiped them away, skin crawling. The safe was old. Army surplus green paint chipped and rusted at the corners. A combination dial on the front. And on top, weighted down with a chunk of limestone, another piece of paper. She grabbed it and backed out of the crawl space, gasping for air. The rain was coming down hard now, hammering the roof. Thunder rolled somewhere over the hills. Sloane sat on the floor of the closet and unfolded the note. Same handwriting, same blue ink. Tuck, if you're reading this, our blood's a ledger. Your granddad's work was stolen. Prove you're right or let it die. Act before the clock runs out. The world will eat us alive if you don't. No signature. Just the impression of a hand pressed hard enough at the bottom to smudge the ink. Stolen. Clock runs out. Sloane's mind was racing. Her mother had never mentioned this. Never said a word about the grandfather she barely remembered. Never said anything about stolen work or clocks or... She shoved the note in her pocket and crawled back into the crawl space. The safe. She needed to open the safe. She knelt in front of it, wiping dust off the combination dial. 3 numbers, birth year, 1990. She spun the dial, right to 19, left past 0 to 90, right back to 0. Nothing. She tried again. Same combination, slower this time. Click. The lock disengaged. Sloane held her breath and lifted the lid. Inside the safe was packed tight, a leather-bound notebook, edges worn soft. A stack of yellowed letters tied with string. Newspaper clippings, brittle and faded. Legal documents folded into thirds. And at the very bottom, a birth certificate with a seal she didn't recognize. She pulled out the notebook first. The cover was blank. She opened it to the first page. Handwriting. Neat, precise. Engineer's handwriting. Hartley, Thomas L. Patent number 6, 892147. Technology as described, licensed by Titan Systems, Inc., never remunerated. All rights transferred to next of kin by law. Evidence for future claim, see ledger. Sloane's hands were shaking so hard, she almost dropped the notebook. Patent. Licensed. Never remunerated. She flipped through the pages. Diagrams. Technical drawings. Notes in the margins. Dates. Names. Contract numbers. And then about halfway through, a page that made her stop cold. Royalty schedule. Promised versus paid. 2 columns. Promised figures running into the thousands. Per quarter. Per year. Paid zeros. Every single line, zero, zero, zero. She kept flipping. More notes, more contracts, letters from someone named J. Callahan at Titan Systems. Corporate letterhead. Polite language that barely masked the threat underneath. Mr. Hartley, we remind you that the terms of our agreement include a non-disclosure clause. Any attempt to discuss this matter publicly will result in legal action. And then near the end of the notebook, a page torn from a legal pad. Your mother's handwriting. Dad, if you're reading this, I found the files. I know what they did. I'm so sorry. I'm going to make this right, I swear. The date at the top. April 1994. The month Thomas Hartley died. Sloane sat back on her heels. The notebook clutched to her chest. Her grandfather hadn't died of a broken heart. He'd died fighting. And her mother had known. She reached back into the safe and pulled out the stack of legal documents. Contracts, correspondence, court dockets, everything her grandfather had collected, everything he'd hidden. And tucked in the middle, one sheet crisper than the rest. Newer paper, different ink. Royalty never paid. Estimated value at time of breach $127,300,000. $127 million. Sloane's vision blurred. She blinked hard, trying to focus on the numbers. This can't be real. But it was. The documentation was all here. The patent number, the licensing agreement, the breach of contract, 30 years of unpaid royalties, compound interest, damages. Her grandfather had been owed a fortune, and Titan Systems had stolen it. She sat there in the crawl space, rain drumming overhead, holding proof that her family had been robbed of everything. The phone in her pocket buzzed, battery at 5%. She crawled back out and stood in the bedroom, legs unsteady. Outside, lightning split the sky. Thunder followed close enough to rattle the windows. She needed help. A lawyer. Someone who understood contract law and patents, and the lawyer. The one who'd handled the property transfer. What was his name? She dug through her coat pockets and found the business card. Nathan Thorne, attorney at law. Office in Jasper. She dialed the number. 1 bar of service. The call crackled through. 2 rings. 3. Then a voice, rough and sharp. This is Thorne. Her own voice came out shaky. Mr. Thorne, this is Sloane Hartley. We met 3 days ago. The property transfer. I remember. You find something? She looked down at the papers in her hand. The notebook. The letters. The evidence. I found everything. A pause on the other end. Then, careful. What's everything? Sloane took a breath. My grandfather was an inventor. He had a patent. Titan Systems licensed it in 1974 and never paid him a dime. I have the contracts. I have the correspondence. I have proof. Another pause, longer this time. Then Thorne's voice sharper now. How much were they supposed to pay? She looked at the paper again. The number felt obscene. $127 million. Silence. Then a low whistle. Miss Hartley, can you bring those documents to my office? When? Tonight, if you can. Tomorrow morning at the latest. Why the rush? Because if what you're telling me is true, there's a statute of limitations. Discovery triggers the clock. In Newton County, you've got 3 weeks from the moment you found that evidence to file on behalf of the original estate. Sloane's stomach dropped. 3 weeks? 21 days, Thorne said. Not a second more. She looked at the rain sheeting down outside. The roads would be mud by now. The Honda barely had tread left on the tires. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Good. Don't talk to anyone about this. Don't post it. Don't even tell your friends. Titan's a big company. If they get wind you're coming for them, they'll bury you in motions before you can blink. Understood. Miss Hartley. One more thing. Yes, how much do you have in the bank right now? The question caught her off guard. $42. Why? Because this is gonna be a fight. And fights cost money. You ready for that? Sloane looked down at the papers, the evidence, the proof that her grandfather had been destroyed, that her family had been robbed. She thought about Garrett's smirk, the lawyer's office laughing, everyone who'd looked at her like she was nothing. I don't have money, she said, but I've got this. And I've got nothing left to lose. Thorne was quiet for a moment, then almost gentle. That might be enough. I'll see you tomorrow. He hung up. Sloane stood in the bedroom phone, dying in her hand, rain pounding the roof, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not hope, not yet, but the edge of it. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could hit back. She gathered up the papers in the notebook, stuffed them into her backpack, and zipped it tight. Tomorrow she'd drive to Jasper. Tomorrow she'd start the fight. Tonight she'd sleep on the floor of this broken house with $42 and the weight of her grandfather's stolen legacy pressing down on her chest. The storm raged outside. Lightning lit up the bedroom in stuttering white flashes. Thunder shook the walls. Sloane lay down on the bare floor, backpack under her head coat pulled tight around her. She closed her eyes and thought about Thomas Hartley, the man she barely remembered, the inventor who'd built something worth millions and died with nothing. She thought about her mother, the letter taped under the mailbox, the desperation in those words, act fast, prove you're right. And she thought about Garrett, about the lawyers who'd laughed, about everyone who'd ever looked at her and decided she didn't matter. Tomorrow the clock started. 21 days to prove her grandfather had been destroyed. 21 days to drag Titan Systems into court and make them answer for what they'd stolen. 21 days to turn $42 and a stack of old papers into justice. The rain hammered down. The wind howled through the broken windows. And Sloane Hartley, broke and beaten and alone in the dark, clenched her fists and promised the ghost of her grandfather one thing. She would not let this die. Not now. Not ever. Dawn came gray and cold. Sloane woke on the floor with her back screaming and the taste of dust in her mouth. The rain had stopped sometime during the night, but the house still dripped. Water running down walls, pooling in the corners where the floorboards had rotted through. She sat up and checked her phone. Dead. She'd forgotten to charge it. The backpack with the documents sat next to her, exactly where she'd left it. She unzipped it and pulled out the notebook one more time just to make sure it was real. Patent number 6892147. Thomas Hartley. Titan Systems Inc. Real. She stuffed it back in the bag and got to her feet. Every muscle ached. Sleeping on bare wood at 34 wasn't the same as sleeping on bare wood at 24. Her body reminded her of that with every movement. Outside, the world was soaked. Mud everywhere. The path to the U-Haul looked like a swamp. She slogged through it, boots squelching, and climbed into the cab. The engine turned over on the third try. She plugged her phone into the cigarette lighter and waited for it to come back to life. 2%. 3. 4. As soon as it hit 5, it started buzzing. Messages flooding in. 3 from Garrett. She deleted them without reading. 1 from the bank. Overdraft warning. And 1 from a number she didn't recognize. Time stamp 6:47 a.m. Office opens at 8. Come early. We have work to do. N.T. Nathan Thorne. She put the truck in gear and headed for Jasper. The drive took 40 minutes. Winding roads through hills that were just starting to show their fall colors. Red and gold bleeding through the green. Mist hung in the low places thick as cotton. Sloane's hands were tight on the wheel. Her mind kept running through what she'd say. How she'd explain. How she'd convince Nathan Thorne that this wasn't insane. $127 million. Stolen from a man who died poor. It sounded insane even to her. But the evidence was there. The contracts. The letters. The numbers. She reached Jasper just after 7:30. Small town. Main Street with a hardware store, a diner, a post office. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers stood out. Nathan Thorne's office was at the end of the block. Single-story brick building with a crooked neon sign. Half the letters were out. What remained spelled Thor Ati. Sloane parked and grabbed the backpack. The front door was unlocked. She pushed through into a cramped waiting room that smelled like old coffee and tobacco. Vinyl chairs. A receptionist's desk buried under stacks of files. No receptionist. From somewhere in the back, a voice called out. "That you, Miss Hartley?" She followed the sound down a narrow hallway. The walls were lined with framed diplomas and photos. Nathan Thorne shaking hands with people in suits. Nathan Thorne at some kind of ribbon-cutting ceremony. Nathan Thorne much younger in military dress uniform. The office at the end was small and cluttered. Desk covered in papers. bookshelves sagging under the weight of legal volumes. And behind the desk, Nathan Thorne himself, late 50s, thin, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, tie askew, sleeves already rolled up even though it wasn't 8 in the morning yet. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Let's see what you've got." Sloane sat and pulled the documents out of her backpack. The notebook, the letters, the contracts. She spread them across his desk like a card dealer laying out a hand. Nathan picked up the notebook first, flipped through it without speaking. His expression didn't change, but his eyes moved fast, scanning, absorbing. After a few minutes, he set it down and reached for the contracts. Sloane waited. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the building, a pipe rattled. Finally, Nathan leaned back in his chair. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was careful, controlled. "This is real." Sloane nodded. "You understand what this means?" She wasn't sure. "That's why I'm here." Nathan put his glasses back on and tapped the notebook. "Your grandfather invented something, a piece of technology. Titan Systems licensed it in 1974, agreed to pay quarterly royalties based on usage, and then never paid a single dime. That's what the ledger says. It's not just the ledger. These contracts are binding. The correspondence shows Titan knew they owed the money, and they used legal threats to keep your grandfather quiet. So he was robbed. Robbed is a kind word for it." Nathan slid one of the letters across the desk. "Read this." Sloane picked it up. Titan Systems letterhead. Dated March 1988. "Mr. Hartley, we remind you that any public discussion of our business relationship will be considered a breach of the non-disclosure agreement signed in 1974. Such a breach will result in immediate legal action, including but not limited to seizure of assets and criminal charges for corporate espionage. We trust you will continue to honor the confidentiality clause." She set it down, hands shaking. They threatened him. They did more than threaten. Nathan pulled another document from the stack. "This is a lien filing. Titan put a lien on your grandfather's house in 1989. Claimed he owed them money for breach of contract. It's all fabricated, but by the time he could have fought it in court, he didn't have the resources. He died in 1994, broke, alone, destroyed by the people who stole his work." Nathan's voice had an edge now. Anger tightly controlled. "This isn't unusual. Big companies do this all the time. Find someone small, someone without lawyers or money or connections. License their work. Promise them the world and then crush them when they ask for what they're owed. Can we prove it? We can. And we will." Nathan pulled a yellow legal pad toward him and started writing. "But we need to move fast. You found this evidence yesterday." "Yes." "Then the clock started yesterday. 21 days from discovery to file. We're down to 20 now." Sloane felt the walls closing in. 20 days to build a case against a corporation. 20 days to find evidence and witnesses, and Nathan must have seen the panic on her face because he held up a hand. Stop. We can do this. But I need to know you're committed. This isn't gonna be clean. Titan will fight. They'll drag you through the mud. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, buy you off. And if none of that works, they'll try to bleed you dry with legal fees. I don't have money for legal fees, I know. That's why I'm taking this on contingency. We win, I get a percentage. We lose, you owe me nothing. Why would you do that? Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he turned one of the photos on his desk around to face her. Black and white. A man in miner's coveralls, hard hat in hand, grinning at the camera. That's my father. Nathan's voice was flat. He worked for Titan in the 60s and 70s. Died in a cave-in when I was 12. They promised my mother a pension. Workman's comp. Death benefits. She got an IOU and a letter saying the company was restructuring. The check never came. Sloan looked at the photo, at the young Nathan Thorne standing next to his father, both of them smiling. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Get angry. Nathan turned the photo back around. Anger's useful. Anger gets things done. He stood and grabbed his jacket off the back of the chair. Come on, we've got work to do. They spent the next 6 hours sorting through every piece of evidence. Nathan's paralegal arrived at 8. Margot Brennan. 40 years old, sharp-eyed, built like someone who didn't take nonsense from anyone. She took one look at the spread of documents on Nathan's desk and whistled low. This is the Hartley case. Nathan nodded. We need to move fast. Start pulling files on every patent case Titan's been involved in for the last 30 years. I want names, dates, outcomes. Margot was already pulling out her laptop. How far back, 1974 to present? That's 50 years of litigation. Then you'd better start now. Margot grinned. You're lucky I like impossible tasks. She set up in the conference room. Within an hour, she had a system. Files organized by year. Cross-referenced by case number. Every time Titan Systems appeared in a court docket, she flagged it. The pattern emerged fast. Titan had been sued at least a dozen times for breach of contract, patent disputes, royalty disagreements, and every single time they'd either settled out of court with an NDA or won on a technicality. Sloan watched Margot work, her own sense of dread growing. How do we beat them if they've never lost? Margot looked up. They've never faced someone with evidence this clear. Most plaintiffs had verbal agreements, handshake deals. Your grandfather documented everything. That's the difference. Nathan came in with coffee and a stack of printouts. I've been running the numbers. If we can prove breach of contract and add compound interest, the damages are north of $150 million. Sloan's breath caught. That's more than the estimate. That's what they owe. Nathan set the printouts down. But here's the real leverage. This isn't just your grandfather. Titan did this to other people too. We file this as a class action. We can bring in every plaintiff they've screwed over the last 3 decades. How many people is that? Margot looked at her screen. Based on what I'm seeing, could be 50. Could be 100. 100 families. Nathan nodded. 100 families who thought they were crazy. Who thought they'd imagined the promises. Who gave up because fighting a corporation felt impossible. Sloane felt something shift in her chest. This isn't just about my grandfather. No. It's about all of them. Nathan's voice was steady. But you're the key. You're the named plaintiff. You're the one with the evidence. If you cave, they all go down with you. I won't cave. Good. Because we start outreach today. Margot's going to draft a notice. We'll send it to every plaintiff on record. Anyone who's ever filed against Titan. And we'll see who's willing to fight. By noon, the first emails went out. By 2 in the afternoon, the responses started coming in. Margot's computer chimed, then chimed again, and again. She looked up, eyes wide. We've got replies. How many? 15. No, 20. Nathan, they're flooding in. Sloane moved to look over her shoulder. The inbox was filling. Message after message. People she'd never met. Names from all over the country. I thought I was the only one. They told me I was crazy. I lost my house fighting them. I want on in. By 4 o'clock, they had 43 affidavits. By 6:61. By the time the sun set, 87 people had signed on. Nathan stood in the middle of the conference room surrounded by printouts and shook his head. I've never seen anything like this. Margot was still typing, still compiling. They're all the same story. Inventor makes something. Titan licenses it. Payments stop. Legal threats start. Families destroyed. Sloane read through one of the affidavits. An old woman in Kentucky. Her husband had invented a drill bit modification in 1981. Titan promised him $50,000 a year. Paid him for 6 months. Then nothing. He died in 1995, still waiting for the money. Another one. A man in Missouri. Chemical process for ore refinement. Titan used it for 15 years without paying. When he sued, they countersued for breach of NDA, and he lost his savings fighting them. Story after story. Each one a life ruined. Sloane looked at Nathan. We can win this. We can. But Titan's going to know we're coming. Margot, send everything to my encrypted server. Air gap the backups. I don't want them hacking us and deleting evidence. Already done. Nathan checked his watch. It's late. Miss Hartley, you have somewhere to stay tonight. Sloane hesitated. I've got the house. That death trap with no electricity. Nathan grabbed his keys. There's a motel 2 blocks from here. I'll cover it. I can't let you do that. You can and you will. You're no good to me exhausted. Get some sleep. We start again tomorrow at 6. Sloane wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up. She nodded. Nathan walked her to the door. One more thing. Don't talk to anyone about this. Don't post it. Don't even tell friends. Titan's lawyers are good. If they catch wind before we file, they'll bury us in motions. Understood? Good. See you tomorrow. She left the office and walked to the motel. The clerk barely looked up as she paid cash for one night. $38. That left her with $4.16. The room was small and clean. A bed. A TV bolted to the wall. A bathroom with a dripping faucet. Sloane dropped her backpack on the bed and sat down. Her phone buzzed. Text from Nathan. Check your email. Sent you something. She opened her email. One new message. Subject line, keep this safe. Inside a PDF. The compiled case file. Every document. Every affidavit. Every piece of evidence they'd collected today. And a note at the bottom. If anything happens to me, this goes public. If anything happens to you, I'll make sure they pay. We're in this together now. N.T. Sloane closed the email and lay back on the bed. 87 people. 87 families who'd been destroyed. And in 20 days, they were going to make Titan answer for all of it. She closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt something that almost resembled hope. Day 5 came fast. Sloane woke to her phone buzzing. Text from Nathan. Don't come to the office. They know. Meet me at the diner. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed her backpack and ran. The diner was 2 blocks away. Small place. Vinyl booths. Smell of bacon and burnt coffee. Nathan was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee and a grim expression. Sloane slid in across from him. What happened? He slid his phone across the table. Email from Titan's legal department. Timestamp 4:18 a.m. Cease and desist. Slander and defamation. Any further contact with our clients or employees will result in legal action, including but not limited to damages, injunctions, and criminal charges for harassment. Sloane looked up. They're threatening us. They're scared. Nathan took the phone back. That email went to me, Margot, and 12 of our plaintiffs. They're trying to intimidate people into dropping out. Did it work? 3 people pulled out this morning. The rest are holding firm. Sloane felt a flash of anger. They can't do this. They can. And they will. Nathan leaned forward. This is what I warned you about. They're going to fight dirty. The question is, are you ready for it? Before Sloane could answer, the door to the diner opened. 2 men walked in, both in expensive suits, both with the kind of cold, polished look that came from corporate boardrooms and lawyers' offices. They scanned the room, spotted Nathan and Sloane, and walked straight to their booth. The taller one smiled. Practiced. Professional. Miss Hartley, I'm Richard Voss, Associate Counsel for Titan Systems. This is my colleague, David Preston. Sloane didn't move. What do you want? Just to talk. Voss gestured to the empty side of the booth. Nathan's voice was ice. No. Say what you came to say and leave. Voss's smile didn't falter. We understand you've been collecting signatures for some kind of class action suit. We wanted to reach out personally. See if we could resolve this amicably. There's nothing to resolve. Nathan's hand was on his coffee cup, knuckles white. Your company stole from Miss Hartley's grandfather. We have proof. We're filing in 16 days. The other man, Preston, spoke for the first time. His voice was clipped, efficient. Miss Hartley, you're making a mistake. This case will drag on for years. You'll spend money you don't have. And at the end, you'll lose. We have an army of lawyers. You have a small-town attorney and a stack of old papers. Sloan met his eyes. Those old papers prove your company committed fraud. Voss leaned in, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. Let's be realistic. You're broke, divorced, living in a condemned house. We can make this go away. Cash settlement, non-disclosure agreement. Enough money to get you back on your feet. How much? $250,000. Sloan felt Nathan tense beside her, but she kept her eyes on Voss. You're offering me $250,000 to drop a $127 million claim. It's a generous offer considering you have no guarantee of winning. She leaned back and crossed her arms. You ever wonder what it's like to be righteous? And when Voss's smile finally cracked. Excuse me, you heard me. You came here thinking money would fix this. Thinking I'd fold because I'm desperate. But you don't get it. This isn't about me. It's about my grandfather. It's about the 87 other people your company destroyed. And I'm not taking your blood money. Preston cut in, voice harder now. Miss Hartley, you're on a clock. Statute closes in 16 days. Your time's almost up. Sloan stood. Then you'd better run faster. She walked out of the diner without looking back. Nathan caught up with her on the sidewalk. His expression was something between shock and admiration. You just turned down $250,000. Sloan kept walking. They were trying to buy silence. They were. Most people would have taken it. I'm not most people. Nathan fell into step beside her. No, you're not. They walked back to the office in silence. Margot was waiting with more news. We're up to 94 plaintiffs. Nathan nodded. Good. Draft a response to Titan's cease and desist. Tell them we'll see them in court. Already done. Margot handed him a printout. And I found something else. An internal memo, leaked from someone inside Titan. Sloan moved closer. What kind of memo? The kind that proves they knew exactly what they were doing. Margot pulled it up on her screen. This is from 1987. Senior management discussing how to handle patent disputes. Quote, maintain legal pressure. Small inventors cannot afford prolonged litigation. Settlements with NDAs are preferable to court losses. They had a strategy. Nathan was reading over her shoulder. This wasn't accident or oversight. This was policy. There's more. Margot scrolled down. Financial records, shell companies, money being moved offshore to avoid paying royalties. This is systematic fraud. Sloan felt the weight of it. How do we get this in front of a judge? We included in the filing. Nathan was already making notes. Corporate malfeasance. Pattern of behavior. This isn't just breach of contract. This is racketeering. The days blurred together after that. Sloan and Nathan worked 18-hour shifts, sorting evidence, compiling affidavits, building the case piece by piece. Margot coordinated with plaintiffs across the country. Phone calls, video conferences, every conversation the same. Tell me your story. Tell me what they took from you. And the stories came. A widow in Tennessee whose husband invented a ventilation system. Titan used it in every mine they operated. Never paid a dime. He died in debt. A man in Colorado who developed a safety harness. Titan licensed it, marketed it, sold it worldwide. He got nothing. Lost his house. Lost his family. A woman in West Virginia whose father created a water filtration process. Titan made millions. He made nothing. Drank himself to death. Every story was a weight, a reminder of what was at stake. On day 12, Sloan got a phone call at 2 a.m. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up, heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, slurred, angry. You think you're smart. Hartley, you think you can beat us. Who is this? You're gonna regret this, honey. You and your hillbilly lawyer. We know where you live. Sloan's hand tightened on the phone. You threaten me again, and I go to the state police. A string of curses. Then the line went dead. She sat there in the dark, heart hammering. Then she called Nathan. He answered on the first ring. What happened? Someone just threatened me. Sloan kept her voice steady. Unknown number. Male voice. Said I'd regret this. You need to file a police report. I will. In the morning. No, now. I'll meet you at the station. Nathan, it's 2 a.m. I don't care. His voice was hard. This is escalating. We file a report. We get it on record. And we keep pushing. They met at the police station, filed the report with a sleepy deputy who took notes but didn't seem particularly concerned. Probably just a crank call, ma'am. Sloan wanted to scream. Instead, she thanked him and left. Outside, Nathan handed her a thermos of coffee. You okay? She nodded. Just angry. Good. Channel it. On day 15, the anonymous tip came. Email from a burner account. Subject line. You need to see this. Inside a single line of text. Titan board meeting yesterday. CFO stepping down effective immediately. Documents being shredded in the legal department. If you're going to move, move now. Attached photos. Blurry but clear enough. A shredder running in an office. stacks of papers on a table, and in one shot, visible on a computer screen, a spreadsheet with the header, Royalty Avoidance Strategy, 1974 to present. Sloan forwarded it to Nathan immediately. His response came back in seconds. This is it. This is what we needed. File date moved up. We go to court in 6 days. 6 days. The clock was running out. Nathan gathered the team. Sloan, Margot, a junior associate named Kevin who'd been helping with research. We have 97 plaintiffs signed on. We have documentation of fraud going back 30 years. We have internal memos proving intent. And now we have evidence they're destroying documents. Nathan looked at each of them. This is winnable. But we need to be perfect. Every filing has to be airtight. Every piece of evidence has to be verified. No mistakes. They worked around the clock. Sloan barely slept. She'd moved into the office, sleeping on the couch in the break room, when exhaustion forced her to stop. Living on coffee and adrenaline. On day 18, Garrett sent another text. Heard you're suing Titan. That's hilarious. You'll be bankrupt by Christmas. Sloan deleted it. She didn't have time for him anymore. On day 19, Margot finished compiling the final affidavits. 103 plaintiffs, each one with a story. Each one with proof. On day 20, Nathan filed the motion. Hartley versus Titan Systems, Inc., class action lawsuit. Breach of contract. Fraud. Racketeering. Damages exceeding $150 million. The news broke that afternoon. Local station picked it up first, then regional. By evening, it was on national outlets. Small-town woman takes on corporate giant. David versus Goliath. The underdog story America loves. Sloan's phone exploded with interview requests. She ignored all of them. On day 21, the night before the hearing, Nathan called everyone to the office. 32 plaintiffs had made the trip to Newton County. They filled the small conference room. Old men with miners' hands, widows with trembling voices, children of people who died waiting for justice. Sloan stood in the doorway and looked at them. This was real. These were the people who'd been destroyed. Nathan addressed the room. Tomorrow we go to court. Titan's gonna bring everything they have. Their lawyers will try to dismiss. They'll claim the statute's expired. They'll say you have no standing. They'll do everything they can to shut this down before it starts. He paused. Let them try. Because we have something they don't. We have the truth. And we have each other. The room was silent. Then an old man in the back stood up. Sloan recognized him from one of the affidavits. Kentucky. Lost his house fighting Titan. He looked at Nathan, then at Sloan. His voice cracked when he spoke. Thank you for giving us a chance. Others nodded. A woman wiped tears from her eyes. Sloan felt the weight of it, the responsibility. These people were trusting her, believing in her. She couldn't let them down. After the meeting, Nathan walked her out to the parking lot. The night was cold, stars sharp overhead. "You ready for this?" he asked. Sloane thought about the phone call, the threats, Garrett's mocking texts, all the people who'd told her to give up. She thought about her grandfather, dying broke and alone. She thought about her mother, the letter taped under the mailbox. "Act fast. Prove you're right. I've never been more ready." Nathan nodded. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we make history." Sloane drove to the gas station at the edge of town, the one with the broken sign and the abandoned lot behind it. She parked the Honda and climbed into the back with her sleeping bag. Rain started again, soft at first, then harder, drumming on the roof like a heartbeat. She lay there in the dark and listened. Tomorrow the fight began. Tomorrow she'd walk into that courthouse with 100 families behind her and face down the corporation that had destroyed them. Tomorrow she'd prove that justice wasn't just for people with money and power. Tomorrow she'd show the world that even the smallest voice could make them listen. The rain hammered down, and Sloane Hartley, broke and beaten but not broken, closed her eyes and dreamed of victory. The courthouse doors opened at 8. Sloane stood on the steps with Nathan and watched the crowd gather. Plaintiffs in their Sunday clothes, pressed shirts worn thin at the elbows, dresses that had seen weddings and funerals, and now this, the last chance. 32 of them had made the trip. Some drove all night from Kentucky and Missouri and Tennessee. Others flew in on planes they couldn't afford, all of them converging on this small county courthouse in Arkansas, because a woman they'd never met had found a safe behind a wall. The morning was cold, October slipping toward November. The kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there. Nathan adjusted his tie. Third time in as many minutes. Nervous energy crackling off him. "You good?" Sloane asked. He nodded. "You?" She thought about the question. Was she good? She'd slept maybe 3 hours total. Her stomach was twisted in knots. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. But when she looked at the people on the courthouse steps, waiting, hoping, she felt something else. Something harder than fear. "I'm ready." Nathan glanced at his watch. Titan's team will already be inside. Setting up. Making sure the judge sees them as the professionals and us as the upstarts. Let them. He looked at her, studied her face, then nodded. "Okay. Let's go bury them." They walked up the steps together. Margot was waiting inside with 3 boxes of documents on a rolling cart. The junior associate, Kevin, stood next to her, looking pale and terrified. The gallery was already filling. Media in the back rows. Cameras not allowed inside, but reporters with notepads, scribbling observations. Local news. Regional outlets. One crew from a national network. And at the front, filling an entire jury box, Titan's legal team. Sloane counted 8 lawyers, all in matching Navy suits, all with matching leather briefcases, all looking like they'd stepped out of a corporate catalog. At the head of the table sat Richard Voss, the man from the diner. He saw Sloane and smiled. That same practiced professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. She didn't smile back. Nathan led them to the plaintiff's table, smaller, more cramped. Their boxes of evidence barely fit. Behind them, the gallery filled with plaintiffs. The old man from Kentucky who'd thanked her. The woman from Tennessee who'd lost her husband. Families who'd been destroyed and had come here for one last shot at justice. Sloane turned in her seat and looked at them, saw the hope in their faces, the fear, the desperate need to believe that maybe, just maybe, this would work. She turned back around, jaw set. At precisely 9 o'clock, the bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Judge William Kavanaugh presiding. The judge entered. Late 60s. Black robe hanging loose on a thin frame. Face like granite weathered by decades on the bench. He took his seat and surveyed the courtroom with eyes that missed nothing. Be seated. The room settled. Papers rustling. Someone coughing in the back. Judge Kavanaugh picked up a file, scanned it briefly, then set it down and looked directly at Sloane. This is case number 2024-CV-1847. Hartley versus Titan Systems Incorporated. Class action motion for reversal of improper asset distribution and breach of contract. He paused. I've reviewed the filings. This is irregular, to say the least. Nathan stood. Your Honor, we're prepared to demonstrate that Titan Systems engaged in a systematic pattern of fraud spanning 3 decades. Judge Kavanaugh held up a hand. I'm sure you are Mr. Thorne, but first we'll hear from the defense. He looked at Titan's table. Mr. Voss. Richard Voss stood smoothly, adjusted his cufflinks, smiled at the judge like they were old friends. Your Honor, this entire action is without merit. The plaintiff, Miss Hartley, claims to represent the estate of Thomas Hartley, deceased 1994. But she has no legal standing. She's a distant relation by marriage to a deceased heir. Previous arrangements were all properly executed and approved by probate court. Nathan was on his feet. Objection. Miss Hartley is the named beneficiary due to fraudulent omission in the original probate proceedings. We have documentation proving Titan actively interfered with proper estate distribution. Judge Kavanaugh leaned back. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Voss. Voss didn't miss a beat. Furthermore, Your Honor, the statute of limitations on any alleged breach expired decades ago. Miss Hartley can't simply discover old documents and reset the clock. Nathan spoke before the judge could. Discovery triggers the limitation period in Newton County. Miss Hartley found evidence of ongoing fraud 21 days ago. We filed within the statutory window. The judge made a note. We'll come back to that. Mr. Voss, anything else? Yes, Your Honor. Voss gestured to his team. We've prepared a comprehensive motion to dismiss based on lack of standing, expired statute, and failure to state a claim. This case should not proceed. Judge Kavanaugh looked at Nathan. Response. Nathan picked up the first document from their stack. Your Honor, may I approach? The judge nodded. Nathan walked to the bench and handed him a leather-bound notebook. This is Thomas Hartley's original ledger. Patent number 6892147. Licensed to Titan Systems in 1974, with a royalty agreement. He pointed to a page. Here are the promised payments, quarterly distributions based on usage. And here, he flipped to another page, is the record of what was actually paid. Nothing. For 30 years, nothing. Judge Kavanaugh examined the ledger. His expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Voss stood again. Your Honor, anyone can create a ledger after the fact. This proves nothing without corroborating evidence. Sloane felt her pulse spike. That was the opening. The moment she'd been waiting for. She stood. Judge Kavanaugh looked at her. Miss Hartley. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge hesitated, then nodded. Proceed. Sloane stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. Your Honor, my grandfather was an inventor. A good man who trusted that a handshake and a contract meant something. Titan Systems took his work. They promised to pay him. And then they spent 3 decades making sure he never saw a dime. She pulled out the stack of letters. These are from Titan's legal department. Threats, intimidation, liens filed against my grandfather's property to silence him. He died broke and alone because your client. She gestured at Voss. Decided his invention was worth stealing. Voss was on his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This is inflammatory grandstanding, not legal argument. Judge Kavanaugh held up a hand. I'll allow it. Miss Hartley, do you have evidence beyond the ledger? Sloane nodded. We have the original licensing agreement. We have correspondence between my grandfather and Titan proving they knew they owed payment. We have internal corporate memos outlining a strategy to avoid paying royalties. And we have 31 affidavits from other inventors Titan defrauded using the exact same tactics. The courtroom went silent. Judge Kavanaugh leaned forward. You have corporate memos. Nathan stepped in. We do, Your Honor. Leaked by a whistleblower inside Titan. They explicitly discuss maintaining legal pressure on small inventors who can't afford to fight back. Let me see them. Margot handed the documents to Nathan, who approached the bench. The judge read slowly. His jaw tightened. After a long moment, he looked up. Mr. Voss, you want to explain this? Voss's composure cracked, just slightly. Your Honor, those documents were obtained illegally. They're inadmissible. Were they obtained illegally, Mr. Thorne? Nathan shook his head. They were provided by a concerned employee acting as a whistleblower, fully protected under federal law. Judge Kavanaugh set the memos down. I'm inclined to allow them. He looked at Voss. Anything else? Voss regrouped quickly. Your Honor, even if we accept these documents as genuine, which we don't, the plaintiff still can't prove damages. She's claiming over $100 million based on a 30-year-old agreement. Nathan pulled out another file. Your Honor, we've calculated damages based on Titan's own financial disclosures. The patent in question was used in every mining operation they ran from 1974 to present. The technology is still in use today. Based on their reported revenues and the agreed royalty rate, Thomas Hartley was owed $127 million. Add compound interest and we're over 150 million. The number hung in the air. Judge Kavanaugh looked at Titan's table. That's a substantial claim. You have a response. Voss stood again, but this time his confidence was wavering. Your Honor, we're prepared to discuss a settlement. Perhaps we can resolve this without further proceedings. Sloane felt Nathan tense beside her. She knew what was coming. The offer. The attempt to make this go away quietly. But Nathan didn't give them the chance. Your Honor, we're not interested in settlement. We want full reversal of the fraudulent probate proceeding. We want every cent Titan owes plus interest. And we want it on the record so every other family they destroyed knows what happened here. Judge Kavanaugh studied Nathan for a long moment. Then he looked at Sloane. Miss Hartley, this is your case. What do you want? Sloane thought about her grandfather, about Owen, about her mother's letter, about all the people sitting behind her who'd waited decades for this moment. She thought about Garrett's mocking smile, about the lawyers who'd laughed, and she thought about the $42 she'd had in her account 3 weeks ago. I want justice, Your Honor. Not just for my family, for everyone here, for everyone Titan ever wronged. The judge was quiet. The courtroom held its breath. Then he nodded. Mr. Voss, I'm denying your motion to dismiss. This case has merit, and it will proceed. Voss sat down heavily. His team immediately began whispering, shuffling papers. Judge Kavanaugh continued. However, before we move forward, I want to see everything. All the evidence, all the affidavits, all the financial records. He looked at Nathan. You have 1 hour to present your case. Make it count. Nathan nodded. We will, Your Honor. For the next hour, Nathan and Sloane laid it all out. The licensing agreement, signed in 1974. Thomas Hartley's signature, clear and unmistakable. The royalty schedule, quarterly payments based on usage. Numbers that should have made Thomas wealthy. The payment records. A long column of zeros stretching across 30 years. The letters. Titan's legal department threatening Thomas with lawsuits if he spoke publicly about the agreement. The lien, filed in 1989 against Thomas's home, fraudulent, designed to intimidate. The affidavits, one after another. Inventors from across the country, all with the same story. Titan promised. Titan used. Titan never paid. And finally, the internal memos. Nathan projected them on a screen. The words stark and damning. Strategy for handling small-scale patent disputes. Maintain legal pressure. Avoid court when possible. Settlements with ND as preferable to admitting fault. The courtroom was silent as Judge Kavanaugh read. When Nathan finished, he turned to the judge. Your Honor, this isn't a case of oversight or miscommunication. This is corporate policy. Titan built their fortune on the backs of people they destroyed. And they did it knowingly, systematically for decades. He gestured to the gallery. These 32 people are just the ones brave enough to come forward. There are hundreds more, maybe thousands. All of them robbed. All of them silenced. Judge Kavanaugh looked at Titan's table. "Mr. Voss, do you have a response?" Voss stood. His earlier confidence was gone. "Your Honor, we deny these allegations. The agreements were complex. There may have been administrative errors, but there was no fraud." Administrative errors. Nathan's voice cut like a blade. "Your Honor, Titan generated over $2 billion in revenue using Thomas Hartley's patent alone. They paid him nothing. That's not an error. That's theft." Judge Kavanaugh held up a hand. "Enough." He looked down at the documents spread before him. Then he looked at Sloane. "Miss Hartley, do you have anything to add?" Sloane stood. "One more thing, Your Honor." She walked to the evidence table and picked up a final document, one they'd saved for last. This is a deposition from Titan's former corporate secretary, retired last year. She came forward after seeing our case in the news. She handed it to the judge. He read. And as he did, his expression darkened. "What am I reading, Miss Hartley?" Sloane's voice was steady. "She describes a document retention policy at Titan. Any paperwork related to royalty disputes was to be destroyed after 5 years. She personally shredded files on at least 40 inventors, including my grandfather." The courtroom erupted, murmurs spreading through the gallery, reporters scribbling frantically. Judge Kavanaugh slammed his gavel. "Order." The room fell silent. He looked at Voss. "Is this true?" Voss was pale. "Your Honor, we have standard document retention policies, but standard policies that conveniently destroy evidence of fraud." The judge's voice was sharp. "Mr. Voss, I suggest you speak very carefully right now." Voss opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his team. They had nothing. Finally, he sat down. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess to discuss settlement options." Nathan stood immediately. "Objection. We've been clear. We're not settling." Judge Kavanaugh looked at Nathan, then at Sloane, then at the gallery full of people who'd waited so long for this. He made his decision. Motion for recess denied. He straightened the papers in front of him. "I've heard enough. Based on the evidence presented, I find that Titan Systems Incorporated engaged in a deliberate and systematic pattern of fraud. The licensing agreement with Thomas Hartley was valid and binding. The royalty payments were never made, and the subsequent actions taken by Titan to intimidate and silence Mr. Hartley constitute bad faith breach of contract." He paused. "Let the weight of the words settle. Therefore, I am granting the plaintiff's motion. Titan Systems is hereby ordered to pay all royalties owed to the estate of Thomas Hartley, including compound interest calculated from the date of first breach. Additionally, I am awarding treble damages for fraud and bad faith dealing." Sloane couldn't breathe. The words were echoing in her head, but they didn't feel real. Judge Kavanaugh continued, "Furthermore, I am certifying this as a class action. All plaintiffs who have submitted affidavits will be included in the judgment. Titan will pay all owed royalties, interest, and damages to each affected party. He looked directly at Voss. And Titan will pay all legal costs associated with this action. The gavel came down. Court is adjourned. For a moment, no one moved. Then the gallery erupted. People were crying, hugging. Strangers holding on to each other like they'd just survived a storm. The old man from Kentucky had his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. The woman from Tennessee was laughing and crying at the same time. Sloane stood frozen at the plaintiff's table. Nathan's hand was on her shoulder, but she barely felt it. They'd won, against every odd, against a corporation with unlimited resources, against lawyers who'd never lost. They'd won. Margot was there pulling her into a hug. Kevin was shaking Nathan's hand, grinning like a kid. And across the aisle, Titan's legal team was already packing up. Faces ashen. Phones out making calls. Damage control. Voss caught Sloane's eye as he headed for the door. For just a second, the professional mask slipped. What she saw underneath was pure fear. Good, she thought. Be afraid. Outside the courthouse, the media was waiting. Cameras, microphones. Questions shouted from every direction. Miss Hartley, how does it feel to win? What's next for the class action? Do you have a message for Titan? Nathan held up a hand. No questions right now. We'll release a statement later. But one reporter pushed through. Just one question, Miss Hartley. What made you keep fighting when everyone said you'd lose? Sloane stopped, looked at the camera. This was never about winning or losing. It was about what's right. My grandfather died believing the world had forgotten him. Today we proved it didn't. She turned and walked away. The news broke within the hour. Class action victory against Titan Systems. Corporate fraud exposed. Damages exceeding $100 million. It spread like wildfire. Local news picked it up. Regional. National. By evening, it was trending on social media. The underdog who took down a giant. The woman with $42 who beat a billion-dollar corporation. Sloane's phone exploded with calls, interview requests, book deals, movie rights. She ignored all of it. 48 hours after the verdict, Titan's board held an emergency meeting. By the end of the day, the CEO had resigned. The CFO was already gone. 3 other executives stepped down citing personal reasons. The company's stock price dropped 40% in a single trading session. And the Department of Justice announced an investigation into corporate fraud and racketeering. Nathan called with updates every few hours. They're scrambling, trying to contain the damage. But it's too late. Every news outlet in the country is running the story. How many plaintiffs now? Last count 147. People are coming out of the woodwork. We'll be processing claims for months. Sloane sat in the motel room and watched the news coverage with the sound off. Images of the courthouse. Photos of her and Nathan on the steps. Graphics showing Titan's stock price collapse. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she'd blocked. Saw the news. Guess you proved me wrong. G. Garrett. She deleted it without responding. Another text. This one from Owen's sister. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. Owen would be so proud of you. Sloan stared at those words until they blurred. 1 week after the verdict, the settlement details were finalized. Titan would pay the full judgment. $112 million distributed among all class members. Legal fees covered. Interest included. For Sloan as the named plaintiff and heir to Thomas Hartley's estate, the payout was just over $8 million. $8 million. She sat in Nathan's office and looked at the number on the paper and couldn't make it feel real. This is really happening, she said. Nathan nodded. You earned it. Every penny. What about the others? Payouts range from $50,000 to $2 million depending on the claim. Everyone gets made whole. Sloan thought about the old man from Kentucky, the woman from Tennessee, all the families who'd waited so long. They're getting justice. They are. Because of you. She shook her head. Because of all of us. Nathan smiled. Fair enough. That afternoon, Sloan drove back to the property. The house looked different now. Still broken. Still sagging. But somehow not quite as hopeless. She walked to the crawl space. The safe was still there. Lid open, empty now. The evidence was all in court custody, preserved as part of the record, but the space itself remained. The hidden room where her mother had left the trail. Sloan knelt and touched the concrete floor. We did it, Mom. We proved it. She sat there for a long time, thinking about Thomas, about her mother, about Owen and the inheritance that had seemed like a curse, about how sometimes the things that look worthless turn out to be everything. When she finally stood, the sun was setting, orange light streaming through the broken windows. She walked outside to the cliff edge. The view stretched for miles. Rolling hills, forests turning gold and red. The Arkansas autumn in full bloom. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Nathan answered on the first ring. I want to set up a fund. Educational scholarships in my grandfather's name. For kids in families affected by corporate fraud. He was quiet for a moment. That's a good use of the money. And I want to pay off the mortgages for every plaintiff who's still struggling. Sloan. I'm serious. We won. But winning isn't enough. We have to make sure this meant something. Nathan's voice was thick when he replied. You're something else, you know that. She smiled. I learned from good people. After she hung up, she stood at the cliff edge and watched the sun sink below the ridge. Her phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. She almost didn't check it, but something made her look. A message. 2 words. Thank you. That was all. No name, no signature. But she knew. Somewhere out there, one of the 147 people whose lives had just changed was reaching out. And that more than the money or the news coverage, or the victory itself. made it real. 3 months later, the memoir deal came through. Sloan didn't want to write it at first. Didn't want to relive everything. But Nathan convinced her. People need to know this story. Not for you. For everyone who's ever been told they're too small to fight back. So she wrote it every night for 6 months, sitting at the kitchen table in the house she'd bought in town. A small place, nothing fancy, but warm and solid and hers. She wrote about Thomas, about the invention that should have made him rich, about the company that stole it. She wrote about her mother, the letters hidden in walls, the desperate need to make things right. She wrote about Owen, the inheritance he'd never known existed, the gift he'd left behind without meaning to. And she wrote about the fight, the 21 days, the courtroom, the moment the judge said the words that changed everything. The book was called What the Wall Hid. It came out the following spring. Within a month, it was on the New York Times bestseller list. Law schools started using it in ethics classes. Business schools assigned it as a case study in corporate responsibility. And people wrote to her. Hundreds of letters, thousands of emails. Your story gave me courage. I was about to give up. But then I read your book. Thank you for showing us that David really can beat Goliath. Sloan read every single one. Summer arrived. The Arkansas heat settled in thick and heavy. Cicadas screaming in the trees. Sloan drove back to the property one last time. The house was gone now. She'd had it demolished, too damaged to save. But the land remained. 2 acres of brush and limestone. The cliff edge where she'd stood that first day with $42 and no idea what came next. She'd donated the property to the county. They were turning it into a park. Hartley Memorial Park. A place for kids to learn about invention and innovation and fighting for what's right. The groundbreaking was scheduled for next month. But today the land was still wild, still quiet. Sloan walked to the cliff edge and looked out. The view hadn't changed. Rolling hills, forests stretching to the horizon. But she had. She thought about the woman who'd stood here 9 months ago, broken and desperate, down to her last few dollars and her last shred of hope. That woman had been ready to give up. This woman standing here now knew better. She knew that justice wasn't something you waited for. It was something you fought for, clawed for, bled for. She knew that being small didn't mean being powerless, and she knew that sometimes the things that look like endings are actually beginnings. Her phone rang. Nathan. She answered. What's up? You sitting down? I'm standing on a cliff, actually. Nathan laughed. Of course you are. Well, stand carefully because I've got news. The Justice Department just indicted 4 Titan executives. Fraud, racketeering, obstruction of justice. Sloan closed her eyes. Good. It gets better. 2 of them are trying to flip. offering to testify about other companies doing the same thing. This could be the start of something big. How big? Nationwide investigation. Hundreds of cases. Maybe thousands. You opened the door, Sloan. Now everyone's walking through. She was quiet for a long moment, then soft. Thomas would have liked that. Yeah, he would have. They talked for a few more minutes. Plans for the scholarship fund, updates on the remaining settlements, news about plaintiffs rebuilding their lives. When they hung up, Sloan stood alone on the cliff edge. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain from somewhere far off. She thought about her grandfather one more time. The man who'd trusted the wrong people, who'd built something beautiful and had it stolen, who died believing he'd failed. She thought about her mother, the letters, the code, the desperate hope that someone would find them. And she thought about herself, the soldier, the divorcee, the woman who'd inherited 2 acres of nothing and turned it into justice for 147 families. Sloan. If you're reading this, your mother's letter had said, "Our blood's a ledger." She understood now. A ledger wasn't just debts owed, it was debts paid. It was balance restored. It was proving that some things once stolen could be reclaimed. She took one last look at the land, at the place where it all started. Then she turned and walked back to her truck. There was work to do, scholarships to fund, families to help, stories to tell. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But for the first time in her life, Sloan Hartley knew exactly who she was. She was the woman who'd found the wall's secret, and she was the woman who'd made damn sure the world heard it. She drove away from the property as thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm was coming, but she'd weathered worse. And she'd keep her eyes open for the next fight, because that's what you did when you learned that justice wasn't a gift. It was a promise you made, and a promise you kept, no matter what it cost.